Elira was not like anyone else. She wasn't from Earth. She had traveled across galaxies from a distant star system called Nitheron 7. On her home planet, people didn't feel deep emotions. Love, joy, pain, these were only studied, never truly experienced. Life there was calm, logical, and controlled. But something inside Elira had always been different. She wanted to feel things, not just observe them. That's why she agreed to be part of a secret mission. Her task was simple. Go to Earth, study human behavior, emotions, and relationships, then return with her report. Her kind believed emotions made species weak. Elira was supposed to prove that, but what she found was not what she expected. She landed in a quiet place in Arizona, far away from cities and noise. It was peaceful. Desert hills, wildflowers, and wide open skies. Her ship was small and hidden well in a forested area. She changed into her Earth disguise, which made her look fully human, though her light blue eyes still looked a little different. People stared, but no one asked questions. Elira started her mission with quiet walks, taking notes on everything she saw. People greeted each other, helped strangers, laughed, and even cried in public. It was strange to her, but also beautiful. One day, while following the scent of blooming flowers, she crossed into someone's private land without realizing. That's when she met him, Caleb. Caleb was a man in his late 30s, quiet and kind. He had brown hair, sun-tanned skin, and hands that looked strong from years of working with the earth. He lived alone on a piece of land where he grew rare flowers and kept bees. Elira stepped into his garden, and before she could speak, he turned to her with a calm voice. "You're a little far from the hiking trails," he said with a smile. Elira was nervous, unsure how to respond. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to come into your space. I was following a scent." Caleb chuckled. "Must have been the lavender. The bees love it too." Instead of getting angry, Caleb offered her a jar of honey. "Try this. My bees worked hard on it." She took the jar, opened it slowly, and tasted the golden liquid. Her eyes widened. It was sweet, but there was more. It had layers, floral, earthy, warm. Something shifted inside her. For a few seconds, she forgot her mission. She was just a girl, tasting something new, standing in front of a man who made her feel curious. "This is incredible," she said, still holding the jar like it was a treasure. Caleb smiled. "I've been working with bees since I was a boy. They're smarter than people think." She looked around at his garden. The air was full of buzzing, but it wasn't loud. It was alive. There were bees everywhere, floating from flower to flower. Each plant looked carefully placed, loved. "Why do you do this?" Elira asked. "Why care so much for something so small?" Caleb shrugged gently. "Because even small things matter. You learn a lot from them if you're patient." She nodded, feeling something she couldn't name. "Do you mind if I come again? Just to learn?" "Of course not," he said. "Nature's meant to be shared." From that day forward, Elira returned almost every afternoon. She said it was for research. She told herself it was part of the mission. But the truth was, she liked being around Caleb. He didn't speak much, but when he did, his words meant something. He showed her how to gently touch the flowers, how to stay calm around bees, how to understand their movements. And slowly, she began to understand more than just bees. She noticed how Caleb smiled when the sun rose just right over his fields. She saw how he talked to his plants, like friends. He never asked her many questions, never pushed her to explain who she was or where she came from. He just let her be. One day, while watching bees gather nectar, she asked, "Why do you live out here all alone?" Caleb thought for a moment. "I used to live in the city, worked in a lab, but it didn't feel real. Out here, things make sense. Life is slow. You can actually feel it. That word again, feel. It came up so often in human conversations. Feelings ruled their lives. They made art, wrote poems, stayed up crying, or danced under stars, all because of feelings. Elira didn't fully understand it yet, but something inside her wanted to. One evening, the sky turned orange and gold. Elira stood beside Caleb, watching bees return to their hives. The garden smelled like honey and summer. "This place," she said quietly, "it doesn't feel like research anymore." Caleb turned to her. "Then maybe you're finally living." She looked at him, surprised by how those words made her chest feel tight. What was this feeling? It wasn't part of her training. It wasn't in any textbook. Later, back in her small ship, she recorded a log entry. Day 17, connection developing. Subject: Caleb shows signs of emotional depth. Reaction to his presence triggers unknown response within me. Further observation required. She didn't write the truth, that she had dreamed of him that night, of walking barefoot through the flowers, of his voice calling her name like it meant something. She didn't write that she smiled in her sleep. She didn't admit that the mission was starting to lose its meaning. The taste of his honey still lingered on her lips. Sweet, warm, alive. And without realizing it, Elira was falling into something she was never supposed to feel. Elira returned to Caleb's farm almost every day now. She told herself it was still part of her study, but deep down she knew it was more than that. Something about Caleb made her feel safe, calm, and curious. It wasn't like anything she had ever experienced on her planet. She began helping him with small tasks, watering the plants, cleaning the bee frames, and collecting fresh honey. Caleb was patient with her. He never laughed at her questions, even the ones that seemed strange to humans. Sometimes, Elira would ask things like, "Why do humans smile when they're hurt?" Or, "What does it mean when your chest feels heavy, even if your body is fine?" Caleb would give her thoughtful answers. "Sometimes people smile to hide pain," he once said. "And when your chest feels heavy, it usually means you're feeling something really strong, like love, or worry, or sadness." His words stayed in her mind long after she left his farm. Each time she walked back to her hidden ship, she felt a strange tug in her heart. She had never felt it before coming to Earth. It wasn't fear, it wasn't excitement. It was something softer, something warm. One afternoon, while they were sitting under a tree, Caleb handed her a slice of bread with honey spread on top. "This is from yesterday's harvest," he said. "Try it." She took a bite. The taste was rich and sweet, but this time it wasn't just about the flavor. It reminded her of the time they had spent together, the laughter, the long talks, the quiet moments. She looked at Caleb and smiled without thinking. "You really care about small things," she said. "I guess I do," Caleb replied. "They make up the big things." Elira looked down at her hands. She wasn't sure how to explain what she was feeling. Her species didn't have words for emotions like this. On her planet, everything was logical. People were expected to do their jobs, follow rules, and never let feelings get in the way. But here, with Caleb, feelings were everywhere, and they felt good. That night, back in her ship, Elira ran a scan on her body. Her pulse was faster than usual. Her skin temperature was slightly higher. There were changes in her brain patterns. She had learned about these reactions before. They were common among humans when they were emotionally connected to someone, but she had never expected to feel them herself. She recorded a voice log. Day 23. Physical and emotional changes continue. I experience a desire to return to the subject's presence repeatedly. The taste of his food, his voice, his energy, all trigger responses I cannot explain. I fear I am no longer observing. I am participating. She sat in silence for a long time after the recording. She looked out the window of her ship. The Earth's moon was glowing softly in the sky. Elira pressed her hand to the glass. She had seen thousands of stars in her life, but this place, this small blue planet, was beginning to feel different. The next morning, she arrived at Caleb's farm early. He was already working in the garden, wearing gloves and a wide-brimmed hat. When he saw her, he smiled. "You're up early today." "I couldn't sleep," she said honestly. "Something on your mind?" Elira hesitated. Then she said, "I think I'm changing." Caleb leaned on his shovel. "Change isn't bad." "But what if I'm not supposed to?" Caleb thought for a moment. "Well, maybe you're not supposed to stay the same either." She helped him plant sunflowers that day. The soil was warm, and the bees buzzed lazily in the sunlight. At one point, their hands brushed while reaching for the same seed. Elira felt a jolt, like energy passing from his skin to hers. She quickly pulled her hand back. "Sorry," she whispered. Caleb looked at her gently. "You don't have to. Be afraid of a little closeness, you know." But that was the problem. She was afraid. Later that evening, Caleb walked her to the edge of his land. They stood by a wooden fence, watching the sun sink behind the hills. Elira felt her heart beating faster than normal. She wanted to say something, but she wasn't sure what. Finally, she asked, "Have you ever cared about someone, but didn't know if you were allowed to?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Yes, once, a long time ago. But I learned something important. Feelings aren't about permission. They just happen." Elira looked into his eyes. They were kind, honest, and something inside her broke open. She wanted to understand this feeling. She wanted to be close, to stay. But she knew her people would never approve. Relationships with other species were forbidden. Emotional attachment was seen as weakness. If they found out what she was feeling, they would end her mission, and maybe worse. She wanted to speak, but no words came. Caleb reached out slowly and gently tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. "You don't have to say anything," he said softly. "I can feel it too." Her breath caught. She stared at him, unsure if this was real. But his eyes were steady, his presence calming. Without thinking, she reached out and held his hand. It was warm, steady, alive. In that simple touch, something deep inside her shifted. She wasn't just studying Earth anymore. She was becoming part of it. Days passed, but Elira couldn't stop thinking about that moment. The way Caleb's hand had felt in hers, the calm in his eyes, and the warmth that spread through her chest. It was new, it was powerful, and it scared her. She had been trained for so many things, language, survival, even Earth customs, but not this, not connection, not emotion. She was supposed to remain neutral, to simply observe, but it was too late for that now. Her body was changing too. At first, it was small things. Her sense of smell became sharper, her heartbeat quickened when Caleb was near, and her thoughts wandered to him when he wasn't. But then it became more serious. One morning, Elira woke up inside her hidden ship, feeling dizzy and overheated. Her skin glowed faintly under the light, her breathing was fast, and she felt a strange pressure deep within her chest. She ran a scan. The results shocked her. She had entered Kethril, a rare condition in her species that only happened when a deep emotional bond formed between two beings. It was not supposed to occur on Earth. It was considered dangerous, even forbidden, because once it began, it could not be reversed. Her body would continue to change. She would become more like the being she bonded with. She would become more human. Elira stared at the results on her screen. Her mission should have ended immediately. She should have sent a message to her home planet asking for return permission. But she didn't. Instead, she shut the computer off and walked toward Caleb's farm. That day, she didn't smile or speak much. Caleb noticed right away. "You look pale," he said gently. "Everything okay?" She shook her head slowly. "No. I think something is happening to me." He set down the jar of honey he was holding and stepped closer. "Want to talk about it?" Elira looked into his eyes. "What if I told you I'm not who you think I am?" Caleb raised his eyebrows but didn't step away. "You can tell me anything." She hesitated. She wanted to tell him the truth. But how could she? Would he believe her? Would he be afraid? Instead, she said, "I think I'm changing. In ways I can't explain. I feel things I didn't think I could feel." Caleb gave a small smile. "That's part of being human." "But I'm not." She stopped herself. She wasn't ready to say it. Not yet. Caleb reached for her hand again. "Whatever you're going through, you're not alone." His kindness made her eyes sting. She looked away quickly, pretending to focus on a bee crawling across a flower. But inside, her thoughts were racing. She didn't know how much time she had before her body fully changed. Once Kethrol reached its final stage, she wouldn't be able to return home. Her people would see her as compromised, a traitor. That evening, back in her ship, Elira opened her communication screen. She started typing a report. "Subject shows signs of emotional attachment. Mission success pending." But her fingers froze. She couldn't lie, but she couldn't tell the full truth either. She deleted the message. Outside, the night sky stretched wide above her. Stars twinkled. The moon glowed softly. She stepped out of her ship and walked barefoot through the grass. The earth felt cool under her feet. She tilted her head back, breathing deeply. She didn't want to leave. The next morning, Elira and Caleb worked side by side in the garden. They were quiet, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt peaceful, like they didn't need words. Suddenly, Elira paused and looked at him. "Why do you think people fall in love?" Caleb looked thoughtful. "Maybe because being alone feels too heavy sometimes. Maybe love makes life feel real." She nodded slowly. "What if someone wasn't allowed to love? What if it was forbidden?" "Then, I'd say rules like that were made by people who forgot what it means to live." His answer made her heart beat faster. That night, Elira felt the transformation inside her deepen. Her skin became warmer, her heartbeat matched a human rhythm, and her emotions, once dull, became sharp and clear. She felt joy, fear, longing, and something stronger than all of them: attachment. She dreamed of Caleb's hands brushing against hers, of his voice calling her name, of his smile in the sunlight. She woke up crying. The next day, she avoided Caleb. She didn't want him to see her like this, so confused, so afraid. She stayed in the forest, walking in circles, trying to calm her thoughts, but the forest only reminded her of him. Everything did. By late afternoon, she gave up. Her heart pulled her back to the farm like a magnet. When she arrived, Caleb was sitting by the beehives, his face calm, his eyes searching the horizon. "You disappeared," he said softly. "I was scared," she admitted. "I didn't want to feel this." He looked up at her. "Feel what?" She sat beside him. "This connection, this closeness. It's changing everything in me." Caleb didn't speak right away. Then he said, "Maybe change is the beginning of something better." She looked at him, her eyes glowing faintly in the evening light. She didn't want to run anymore. She reached out and took his hand again. "I think I need you," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere," he replied. And for the first time since arriving on Earth, Elira let herself believe that maybe she didn't have to choose between duty and feeling. Maybe, just maybe, there was a path that let her be both, herself and someone new. Her body was changing, but so was her heart, and this time, she welcomed it. Elira sat under the old tree near Caleb's garden, her eyes half closed as the wind moved gently through the tall grass. She had been spending more time with him, but now it wasn't just about learning or observing. It was about being near him. Even in silence, she felt connected, like something inside her had found peace. But that peace didn't last long. Inside her ship, hidden deep in the forest, a soft alarm began to blink. It was a message from her home planet, a reminder. Her mission was past the original deadline. They were waiting for her report. If she didn't respond soon, they would come looking for her. She stared at the blinking screen, her heart sinking. What would she say? That she had failed? That she had forgotten her duty because of a man with kind eyes and a warm smile? That she wasn't the same person who had left Nitheron 7. Later that evening, she walked slowly to Caleb's house. He was watering a row of purple flowers when she arrived. He smiled when he saw her, but his smile faded as he noticed the look on her face. "What's wrong?" he asked. "I have to tell you something," she said softly, "and you might not believe it." He set the watering can down and gave her his full attention. "Go on." She took a deep breath. "I'm not from here. Not from this country, not even from this planet." There was a long pause. Caleb blinked, then looked at her carefully. "I'm not joking," she added, her voice trembling. "I know," he said quietly. "I believe you." She was surprised. "You do?" He nodded. "I've always felt there was something different about you. Your questions, your energy, your eyes. I couldn't explain it, but it didn't scare me." Elira's eyes filled with tears, though she wasn't sure why. Relief, maybe. Or something deeper. "I came here to study humans," she explained. "To learn how your emotions work. My people don't feel things the way you do. But being with you, it's changed me." Caleb stepped closer. "So what happens now?" She looked down. "They're waiting for me to report. If I don't go back, they'll come. They'll see my transformation and know I've broken the rules. And if you go back, I'll lose everything I've felt here, everything I've become, and I'll never see you again." They stood in silence for a long time. The sky turned golden, then slowly faded into purple. The bees returned to their hives, and the air grew cooler. Finally, Caleb spoke. "Then don't go back." Her heart skipped. "What?" "Stay here, with me. We'll figure it out." Tears ran down her cheeks. "You'd risk that? Knowing what I am?" He gently reached out and touched her face. "I don't care where you're from. I care about who you are." Elira closed her eyes and leaned into his touch. She had never felt this kind of closeness before. It wasn't just physical, it was something deeper. A connection between hearts. But the next day, everything changed. As she was returning to her ship to send one last message, she felt a strange presence in the air. A shimmer of energy passed through the forest. Her body reacted instantly. Her skin tingled, her senses heightened. They were here. 3 members of her kind stood near her ship, tall and quiet, with pale gray eyes and glowing skin. They had come to bring her home. "Elira," one of them said, his voice smooth and cold. "You've been gone too long." She stood tall. "I'm not going back." "You're showing signs of Kethril," another one said. "This mission is terminated. You are to return for examination." "I've made my choice," she replied. "I choose Earth. I choose him." "This bond is dangerous," the first one warned. "You will lose your original form. You'll become unstable." Then, I'll learn to live with it, she said, because for the first time I feel alive. They looked at each other, then back at her. This is not over. You've broken protocol. There will be consequences. I understand, she said. They disappeared without another word, leaving only the soft hum of their energy behind. Elira ran to Caleb's house, her heart racing. She told him everything, how they had come, what they had said, and what might happen next. Caleb didn't hesitate. We'll leave if we have to. Go somewhere safe. I'll protect you. She smiled through her tears. I've never had anyone say that to me before. He held her tightly. You're not alone anymore. For the next few days, they prepared for the unknown. Caleb packed supplies. Elira hid her ship deeper in the forest. They talked about new places, about disappearing into the world quietly, but deep down, they knew they couldn't run forever. One night, under a sky full of stars, Elira sat beside Caleb by a small fire. Even if I lose everything, she whispered, I don't regret choosing you. He took her hand in his. And I'll keep choosing you, no matter what comes next. The wind blew gently around them. The fire crackled. And though the future was uncertain, their hearts were full of something stronger than fear, hope. Elira and Caleb knew the days ahead would be difficult. The visitors from her planet were not just warnings. They were a promise that more would come. Still, Elira felt stronger than ever. She had chosen a new path, one filled with unknowns, but also with love. They began to prepare. Caleb helped her gather food, clothes, and supplies. They packed a small bag for her ship and made plans to move it to a safer place deep in the forest. The place where she had landed was no longer safe. Despite the worry, there was a new kind of joy between them. Every moment together felt precious. They worked side by side, talking about dreams and fears, laughing quietly when things went wrong. 1. Morning. Elira stood watching Caleb as he tended to the bees. The way he moved, gently lifting the frames and speaking softly to the buzzing insects, reminded her why she had fallen in love. It wasn't just the honey or the flowers. It was his kindness, his patience, and his simple love for life. Elira reached out and touched his arm. Thank you, she said softly. For what? Caleb asked, looking up with a smile. For choosing me. For believing in me. Caleb squeezed her hand. I don't have to choose. You're already part of my life. That day, Elira felt her body continue to change. Her skin was warmer, her blue eyes brighter, and she even noticed a soft glow in her smile. The Kethral phase was moving forward. She was becoming more human in ways she never thought possible. But with change came questions. Would Caleb still love her when she looked different? When she no longer resembled the being she once was? Would she still feel herself? One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, Elira turned to Caleb. What if I lose myself? Caleb looked at her seriously. Then we'll find each other again, no matter what happens. I'm here. Those words filled her with hope. Weeks passed. The visits from her people stopped for a time, but Elira knew it was only a matter of time before they returned. She no longer feared them as much. Instead, she was ready to face whatever came, with Caleb by her side. One night, under a sky full of stars, Caleb and Elira stood by her ship. It was packed and hidden. They were ready to leave if needed. Are you ready? Caleb asked. Elira nodded. More than ever. They embraced, holding each other close. It was a moment full of promise and uncertainty. Suddenly, a bright light appeared in the forest. Figures stepped out, calm but serious. Elira's heart raced. It was them again, but this time she stood tall. I won't go back, she said, firmly. One of the visitors stepped forward. Your choice breaks laws, but we see your transformation. You are no longer the same. Caleb stood beside her. She's found a new life here. You should accept that. There was silence. Then, slowly, the visitors nodded. Very well. Your mission is over. You may stay. Elira breathed deeply. Relief and joy filled her. From that day forward, she lived fully as one of them, human and alien together. She continued to learn, to grow, to love. Caleb and Elira built a small greenhouse where they grew flowers and cared for the bees. The farm became a place of peace, a home filled with laughter and hope. Elira still remembered her home planet and her people, but she no longer felt torn. She had made a choice, one that was hard but true. She had found love, and with it, a new life.